There comes a time in life when silence speaks louder than words, when the laughter that once filled your home fades into memory, and the footsteps of your children grow more distant each year. You sit with a quiet ache, not because you expect anything grand, but because you once gave everything. And now, the echo of absence stirs something deep within you. Is it neglect? Or is it a lesson? Is it rejection? Or is life inviting you to awaken from an old dream? Buddhism teaches that nothing in this world is truly ours, not even the children we raise with our blood, sweat, and tears. They come through us, not from us. What if their distance is not punishment, but a mirror in this journey? We will look deeply into that mirror, not to find blame, but to uncover peace. Stay with me. What you're about to hear may soften something long hardened in your heart. Parental love is often seen as the purest kind of love, sacred, selfless, unwavering. But what if even this love, when entangled with unconscious desires and expectations, becomes the very root of our suffering? Buddhism teaches that all attachment, no matter how noble it may seem, leads to dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, or suffering. And so, the love of a parent, if not grounded in wisdom, can become a karmic bond that quietly binds both parent and child in cycles of pain. Imagine a father who spent his whole life providing, protecting, sacrificing, and now finds himself in the quiet corners of his home, waiting for visits that rarely come, holding space for conversations that never arrive. His love was real. His intentions were good. But beneath that love, perhaps there was also a silent hope that one day his children would repay that devotion with respect, gratitude, and presence. That hope, unspoken but deeply rooted, became a seed of suffering. We rarely notice when love turns into attachment because it often wears the same face. But attachment says, I need you to behave a certain way so I can feel okay. Love says, I see you as you are and wish you well, even if you walk away. The Buddha reminded us again and again, what you are is the result of what you have been. What you will be is the result of what you do now. This is the core of karma. We plant seeds through our thoughts, our words, our actions, sometimes without realizing it. And years later, those seeds bloom into the very circumstances we struggle to accept. When a parent feels neglected by their child, it may not be because the child is heartless or cruel. It may be a karmic reflection, a lesson, a mirror, a moment to awaken. This does not mean the parent is to blame. Buddhism is not about blaming. It is about seeing clearly. And what often needs to be seen is how tightly we hold on to roles, identities, and unspoken contracts that no one agreed to sign. I raised you, so you owe me. That belief may never be voiced out loud, but it lives in the subtle tension between expectation and disappointment. The deeper pain is not the absence of the child, it is the unmet expectation beneath that absence. So, what happens when we begin to question that belief? What happens when we ask ourselves, is my pain truly about them? Or is it about what I hoped they would give me? That is the moment a karmic chain can begin to loosen. The moment love is allowed to return to its purest form, not a bargain, not a burden, but a boundless offering. Stay with this question in your heart. Let it settle. Let it open something tender in you. Because in the next part of this journey, we will look more deeply into the mirror our children hold up to us, and what it shows may surprise you, Or perhaps, finally make peace with something you've been carrying for too long. There is a quiet truth in Zen teachings that often goes unnoticed. Life constantly presents us with mirrors, not to flatter us, but to show us what we most need to see. Our children, perhaps more than anyone else, are among the clearest of these mirrors. When a child ignores us, challenges us, or pulls away emotionally, our first reaction may be hurt or confusion. But what if their behavior isn't a rejection of who we are, but a reflection of something within us that still longs to be seen, healed, or understood? The Buddha taught, you cannot travel the path until you have become the path itself. In parenting, we often teach what we ourselves have not mastered: patience, understanding, presence. Our words may speak of love, but our energy may carry impatience. We tell our children to be calm, yet they grew up watching us worry. We ask them to call us more often, but perhaps we never truly listened when they were little. This is not a path of blame. It is a path of recognition. When our children become distant, it can be a chance to look into the mirror they're holding up and ask, what part of me have I ignored for too long? A father who is hurt by silence may be confronting his own discomfort with stillness. A mother whose child never expresses gratitude may be facing her own difficulty with receiving love without conditions. These moments, though painful, are powerful invitations to return to ourselves, not to fix our children, but to see ourselves clearly through them. Zen doesn't ask us to analyze endlessly or wallow in guilt. It simply asks us to observe without judgment. Can we sit with the discomfort of being forgotten, and instead of closing our hearts, ask gently, what is this pain here to teach me? We often say that children are our future, but from a karmic perspective, they are also our past, our echoes, our reactions, our blind spots. They show us not only who we were, but who we still are. And sometimes, they challenge us in precisely the ways we have yet to grow. That is why parenting is not just a role, it is a spiritual practice. To look into the mirror our children hold without flinching takes courage. But in that courage, something softens. We stop needing them to be perfect. We stop needing them to fill a void. We begin to meet them not as roles, but as fellow travelers, shaped by karma, moving through life as best we can. So ask yourself, not with blame, but with kindness, what is my child showing me about myself? Not what they should change, but what I can begin to heal. In the next part of this journey, we'll dive deeper into the roots of these karmic patterns, not to control the outcome, but to loosen the hold they've had on our hearts for too long. Stay close. The mirror may sting, but what it reveals is the first light of awakening. We often believe that pain begins in the moment we feel it, that the wound is caused by what's happening now. But in Buddhism, we're invited to look deeper. What hurts us today often has roots stretching far behind us, hidden in moments we barely remember, shaped by choices we made without realizing their weight. Karma is not punishment, it's memory. It is the echo of unhealed patterns, of unconscious actions, of words spoken in haste or love withheld in silence. When our children pull away, it can feel sudden, like a betrayal we didn't deserve. But karma gently asks us not to look outward, but to pause and ask what seeds were planted long ago. There are things we pass down to our children not through our teachings, but through our energy, our tone of voice, our glances, our absence when they needed our presence most. The father who now sits in silence once had years of noise, of life moving too fast to truly listen. The mother who feels unseen once ignored her own needs, teaching her children, without words, that love means self-erasure. These are not judgments, but reflections. We all carry karmic threads woven tightly through our ancestry, our culture, our childhoods, and we pass them on, even with the best intentions. The Buddha reminded us, just as the ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, so too does the Dharma have one taste, the taste of freedom. But freedom cannot be tasted if we remain trapped in a cycle of blame and longing. We must first see clearly. And seeing clearly, sometimes, means acknowledging the parts of our past that we'd rather forget, the moments when we were not as present, not as kind, not as awake as we wished we had been. Not because we are bad, but because we are human. This is the deep work of karmic healing, not fixing what's broken, but gently bowing to what has been. It is not about rewriting history, but about meeting it with compassion. When we do this, something softens. We stop trying to force our children to change. We stop replaying the old tapes of if only. We begin to sit in the quiet with a new kind of strength, the kind that comes not from control, but from release. And sometimes, in that release, a space opens not just for our healing, but for theirs. Because whether we speak or stay silent, our children feel the energy we carry. Let that energy become a balm. Let it become something that no longer pulls at them with invisible strings, but welcomes them should they choose to return into the presence of a heart that has forgiven itself. There is a quiet confusion in many hearts, the belief that if we let go of expecting something from our children, we are somehow abandoning our love for them. But true spiritual love is not built on expectation. It's built on presence. The Buddha taught that clinging leads to suffering, and expectations are just another form of clinging dressed in hope. They whisper, "I will feel whole when they say thank you, when they return my care, when they finally see me." But each time that moment doesn't arrive, the heart tightens. We suffer not because love failed, but because expectation was mistaken for love. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means releasing the demand that love must be returned in a certain shape. It means setting the heart free to love without the weight of waiting. Picture a parent who has spent decades giving of their time, their patience, their energy, and now, in the quiet of old age, they wait for acknowledgement, for closeness, for emotional return. This longing is natural, but when it becomes a condition for inner peace, it turns sacred love into silent suffering. To let go is not to stop loving. It is to purify love. It is to say, "I choose to love you whether or not you show up, whether or not you understand me, whether or not you ever say the words I've longed to hear." This is not weakness. This is freedom. It is the quiet strength of a heart that no longer begs for love, but simply is love. In Buddhist practice, we often return to the teaching of non-attachment, not as rejection, but as release. Like opening your hand after holding it in a tight fist for too long. The hand doesn't stop being a hand, it simply rests. In the same way, a parent doesn't stop being a parent by releasing expectations. They become one who loves from a place of peace, not pressure. And perhaps the most beautiful irony is this: when we stop needing our children to respond in a specific way, they may feel safe enough to return on their own, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because love, when it no longer grasps, becomes something they want to be near again. So let yourself breathe here, gently, fully. This is the doorway where suffering begins to dissolve, not because the world has changed, but because your heart no longer waits to be completed by anyone else, not even your own child. And in that silence, in that simple act of letting go, there is something sacred, something unshakable, something you've carried all along, but maybe never fully trusted your capacity to love without needing anything in return. Some wounds do not vanish with time. They do not fade because the world apologizes or suddenly becomes kinder. They soften only when we meet them with presence. The Buddha did not promise a life free of sorrow. He offered a path to meet sorrow with wisdom. And this path is not walked in theory or belief, but in daily practice. Through every breath, every choice to sit with ourselves rather than run from pain, we begin to transform. A parent who feels forgotten by their child carries a grief that words can barely name. But this grief, when held in mindfulness, becomes more than a burden, it becomes a teacher. In Buddhism, we practice metta loving kindness as a way to loosen the knots inside us. We start with ourselves. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. Not because we are selfish, but because no one can pour from an empty cup. As we practice, our hearts begin to widen. We offer metta to those who've hurt us, including our children. Not because they earned it, but because we no longer want to carry the poison of resentment. It is not easy. At first, you may whisper these phrases through tears, with a heart that still aches. But each time you return, each time you sit in silence and choose peace over bitterness, the energy within you begins to shift. You are no longer reacting, you are reclaiming. And in that shift, pain begins to transform, not disappear, but alchemize into compassion. This is the kind of compassion that does not ask for anything in return. It is not dependent on whether your child calls you or remembers your birthday. It exists because you have remembered yourself. The act of sitting, breathing, and gently wishing well to someone who has caused you pain is a radical and sacred act. It says, I am no longer waiting for you to heal me. I will become the healing. This is the power of practice. It gives us back our freedom. It removes the sharp edges from memory and turns them into something that doesn't cut, but teaches. Sometimes, nothing changes on the outside. The child remains distant. The silence stretches, but you are no longer the same. You do not meet that silence with desperation. You meet it with dignity, with clarity, with a love that no longer needs to chase or plead. This is the quiet revolution of spiritual practice. It doesn't fix the world. It transforms the heart. And when your heart changes, the energy you send into the world changes too. The child may feel it. They may not. But your suffering no longer depends on their recognition. You have returned to yourself, to the center of your own being, to a love that begins not in their arms, but in your breath, your stillness, your unshakable choice to love and to let go. There comes a quiet moment on the path when we realize healing doesn't mean getting everything we hoped for. It means making peace with what is. In Buddhist teaching, acceptance is not passive surrender, nor is it giving up. It is the courageous act of seeing reality clearly and bowing to it without resistance. It is saying, This is how it is right now, and I will stop fighting it. For the parent who still longs for reconciliation, who prays each night for a message or a knock on the door, this may feel impossible, but holding on to how life should be keeps us trapped in suffering. Freedom begins the moment we say yes to life, exactly as it stands. The Buddha once said, "Attachment to views is the greatest bondage, and perhaps the view most difficult to release is the one we carry about how our children should behave what they owe us, how they should love us, how they should show up." But children do not grow according to the blueprint in our minds. They grow according to their own karma, their own fears, their own path. And when we measure love by how closely their behavior aligns with our expectations, we not only set ourselves up for pain, we also push them further away. Acceptance is not a resignation to loneliness. It is the opening of the heart to something deeper, a love that no longer needs to cling, a peace that no longer waits. It is realizing that some relationships may never repair the way we imagine, and yet we can still be whole. We can still be loving. We can still bless those who walk away from us without bitterness in our chest. That is not weakness. That is awakening. It is in this space that life begins to soften. You no longer carry the weight of needing to be understood. You no longer look to the past for justice or to the future for closure. You begin to live fully in the sacredness of now. And here, in this moment, you find that what once felt like loss has turned into clarity. What once felt like abandonment has opened the door to self-belonging. The truth is, not every child returns. Not every wound heals on the outside. But when the heart accepts that, it is no longer a wound, it becomes a window, a place where light comes through. And that light, once it enters, has the power to touch every part of your life with gentleness and truth. There is no shame in wishing things had been different, but the deeper peace comes when we no longer need them to be. When we stop waiting for others to complete the story and simply begin living the chapter we're in, fully, honestly, with a heart that has nothing left to prove, only something left to give. To be a parent is to step into a role that carries the weight of generations. It is not just a relationship. It is a karmic meeting point where the unfinished stories of the past meet the open possibility of the present. In Buddhism, there is no bond more complex, more powerful, or more spiritually charged than that between parent and child. It is where our deepest attachments live. It is where the self clings hardest to identity. And it is where, if we're willing, profound awakening can unfold. Many of us entered parenthood carrying unconscious burdens, trying to give our children what we never received, or unconsciously repeating the patterns of our parents. We were doing our best, but karma isn't only shaped by intentions. It is shaped by awareness. And now, later in life, when the hands that once held so tightly must begin to open, we are invited into a new phase of parenting, one not based on control, but on consciousness. This is not about correcting the past. It is about breaking the cycle. It is about becoming the first in your lineage to respond to hurt, not with blame, but with compassion, not with fear, but with clarity. When a parent reaches the age where they no longer need to be needed, when love is no longer a tool of approval or reward, they become something rare, a source of peace. A lighthouse not chasing anyone, not begging to be seen, simply shining. The karma of parenthood does not end when your children grow up. It continues every time you choose presence over bitterness, silence over judgment, love over pride. And sometimes, just sometimes, that shift within you begins to ripple outward. A child who is distant feels a softness when they think of you. A door that was closed begins to crack open, not because you forced it, but because you stopped pushing altogether. This is the mystery of spiritual influence. When you embody peace, you invite others to find it in themselves, not by preaching, but by being, not by correcting, but by healing. And this kind of healing begins not with them, but with you. So let this be the legacy you leave, not just a family line, but a karmic turning. A point at which the hurt stopped traveling forward, because someone you chose to awaken. Let your aging not be a descent into loneliness, but a rise into quiet wisdom. Let the later years of your life be a time when your presence, not your expectations, becomes the gift you offer. And if no one notices, if no one comes back, let that be okay. You came back to yourself. And in the end, that is the most sacred return of all. In the quiet of our later years, we are given a gift that few recognize, at first, a chance to return home. Not to a place, or even a person, but to ourselves. The journey through disappointment, longing, and unspoken grief becomes the path of awakening. When we no longer wait to be seen, we begin to truly see. When we no longer chase love, we become it. You are not alone in this. So many carry this quiet ache, this deep love with nowhere to go. But here, in this space, your love can breathe again freely, peacefully, without demand. If this message touched something within you, let it stay with you. And if your heart feels a little lighter, even just for today, we invite you to walk with us. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking this path of gentle awakening together. There is so much more to remember, to release, and to return to.